sacrificed Isaac. Jacob had his vision of the angel ascending. Somewhere around here, Solomon built the first temple of the Jews in 950 BC. And, of course, here too, Jesus is supposed to have overturned the tables of the money changers. And here too, Muhammad ascended into heaven, where he saw Abraham and Moses and Jesus. Muhammad's night journey is celebrated by this mosque, the Al-Aqsa, or Farthest Mosque. And the importance of these heavenly encounters and the location of the mosque is that they cement Muhammad's status as the last prophet. Am I right in thinking that when Muhammad ascended to the seventh heaven on the night flight, he meets Abraham and Moses and Jesus? Is that right?
It's not just a matter of meeting. It's more than meeting them. It is the Muslims which really believe that Muhammad led a prayer. He was the imam, he was the preacher, he was the leader for a prayer when he was joined by Abraham, Isaac, Ismail, Jesus, and the rest of Solomon's David. So this is an important, from religious point of view, that Muhammad is the last true prophet.
And when Muhammad began his preaching, they first prayed in the direction of Jerusalem and not Mecca.
Yes, you are quite right, and that took place for 17 months. For this reason, also Jerusalem is considered important for Islam because it is the first Qibla. Qibla is the direction, among other factors why Jerusalem is important. So it is the first Qibla.
The Qibla is the direction in which Muslims pray, now of course towards Mecca. When you think of the hostility that now seems to exist between Islam and Judaism, it's extraordinary to remember that there are believers in all three religions who hold that this holy hillside, the Mount of Olives, is the place where the resurrection of the dead will begin. And the dead of all three faiths lie in close proximity, waiting for God's great wake-up call. But whatever reconciliation takes place in the afterlife, we must deal with the present and the historic resentments fueled by the occupation of each other's territory. The annals of military history have nothing to match the speed and success of the Arabs' lightning conquests in the 7th and 8th century.
The Prophet died in 632, and 4 decades later, they settled in Egypt, in central Persia. They stretched from Toledo in Al-Andalus, medieval Spain, to the Sindh Valley in Pakistan today.
The most prevalent and popular view is the classical one that Islam was programmed for success. And the fact that it so rapidly swept all over the Mediterranean world and the conquests are regarded as a special miracle granted by God in order to confirm the truth of the Islamic religion and the Islamic message. And this is why you have a revivalist movement, is that if you revive your commitment to Islam, then the divine favor will come back, will again prove that our God is the true and correct one.
Arab horsemen carved huge tracts from the enfeebled empires of Persia and the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire to those in the West. And as they swept through the Eastern Roman Empire, they found Christian heretics who had at least this in common with Islam, that they denied orthodox teaching about the divinity of Christ. There were all sorts of sects holding all sorts of positions. Enophysites, Monophysites, Nestorians, Copts, and these heretics were increasingly persecuted by the middle of the 5th century by the Orthodox Church in Byzantium. Fed up with being bossed about by their Byzantine overlords, they may have been attracted by one aspect of Islam in particular.
There is no clergy in Islam. Any Muslim just adopt Islam, has no middleman between him or her and Almighty God. So It was not like Judaism or Christianity that encouraged many people to adopt this simple, direct religion.
From the very beginning, Islam was so much more than a private relationship between man and God. Muhammad was a political and military leader, as well as the conduit of his faith. And the faith he propounded wasn't just about the cultivation of your immortal soul. It was about creating the perfect society on earth, an Islamic program for the human race. Year 1 of the Muslim calendar is based on that essentially political moment when Muhammad and his followers left Mecca to set up a new Muslim society in Medina.
Even though Islam for the first 10 or 12 years was a persecuted group in Mecca, when they moved to Medina in the year 622, and the famous immigration from Mecca to Medina, Muhammad becomes
a militant figure.
He becomes both the leader, he's a religious leader and a political leader from the very, very beginning.
This is why Muslims don't believe in separation between state and church. I myself believe that there was a separation between state and church, because when we read the Quran speaks almost only about religion. It doesn't speak about the state and how to run the state. I believe there was even a separation between church and the state even in the time of Muhammad. How to appoint a caliph, how to run the state, how many ministers to be there, everything is secular. But for some reason the theologians insist that this was part of the religion.
Religion and politics are inextricably mixed in the notion of Sharia, the Islamic code of religious law. This has been developed over centuries by religious and legal scholars. It's based on the Quran and the life of the Prophet, and it has rules for just about every aspect of daily life.
Theoretically, Allah is the governor, and He put what we call Sharia, the law of Allah. The government is obliged to guard, to defend the Sharia, but they are not above it. They are submitted, they are subjected to the Sharia also. And it was up to the people to decide who is good to rule over them. But if the ruler, and there are many examples in the Islamic history, if the ruler insulted their faith by any way, they had to revolt against him.
We have seen, even in our own time, how militant Islamic groups can target rulers of Muslim countries for not adhering to Sharia. And we have seen how those leaders can pay a terrible price. Like the Egyptian president Anwar Sadat, assassinated in 1981. The very same accusations of a certain worldliness, a willingness to compromise, were made about the Umayyads, the first dynasty to rule the Muslim world. The Umayyads took control less than 30 years after the Prophet's death, and here was the first sharp contradiction between political expediency and the purest demands of Islam.
There were tensions between the ruling class and the ulama, the sort of religious leaders of the community. That was there from the very beginning, and ultimately it's what caused the split between Shia Islam and Sunni Islam. I mean, this is a split that goes back to whether or not you believe that the ruler of the community needs to be a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad or not. And here exactly is a split between religion and politics, because the Shia eventually became more of a religious tradition and less a political one, and the Umayyads went on and carried on as they had before.
As so often, the doctrinal split was really about power. The Umayyads were certainly Muslims, but their real interest was in ruling.
Having a new territory is one thing, controlling, administering it is totally another. They penetrated, conquered, but settlement took centuries. They really acquired the administration of the Byzantine, the palaces,